Chapter 4, Elasticity. In this video, we're going to look at a real-life example of an elastic market and look at how the elasticity of a market can affect the ways that we try to solve problems. We're going to look at the illegal drug market. And before we get started, I want you to predict whether you think in the marketplace for illegal drugs and the demand for drugs, is it elastic or inelastic? If you predicted inelastic, you'd be right. A lot of illegal drugs are highly addictive. So the people that are in demand for those drugs and want to go out and buy them have to because of their addiction. And if they were to stop using the drugs, they'd go through serious withdrawal symptoms. So we're going to look at some policies often used by law enforcement to reduce drugs and the war on drugs. One of those is drug interdiction. And one of those is to, whether these decrease drug-related crime. So one side effect of the use of illegal drugs is crime. We're going to look at two different policies to see if we can reduce illegal drug use and what types of effects they're going to have on the market. So here we're going to use a policy of interdiction. Interdiction is when law enforcement go into the market and they seize the supply. So you'll notice on this supply and demand graph, we have the original supply one and demand one. I've also blocked out in pink the original total revenue of drugs at the original price one, quantity one. When law enforcement officers go out and they seize drugs and take them out of the market, they're literally reducing the supply of drugs in the market. So this is interdiction. If we reduce the supply of drugs in the market and the marketplace is still an inelastic demand, then something interesting happens. The new point on our demand line there at supply 2, which is at an equilibrium of price 2 in quantity 2, I have highlighted that total revenue box in yellow. So the original total revenue that the drug dealers were making from selling their drugs is in the pink box. And once we reduce the amount of supply, because a lot of the buyers of drugs are addicted and they're still going to buy anyway, but now there's a limited amount of supply, it means that they can raise the price pretty significantly. And that means the value, at least to the people selling the drugs, is much higher. So the result is that an increase in total spending on drugs and drug-related crime are both going to rise here. The second type of policy are drug education policies. This is where law enforcement go into schools and they try to help kids understand drugs so that they don't get addicted in the first place. So again, I mapped out the original supply and demand line with price 1, quantity 1 in the larger pink box, and that is the total revenue that the drug dealers were making at the original price and quantity. When you go and educate people who would have been potential users of drugs and they choose not to do drugs in the first place, not to get addicted, and then not to have all of the negative side effects from drugs, it decreases the demand. So when we decrease demand here, you'll notice that the price and quantity of drugs reduces pretty significantly. And now the value or the total revenue of the marketplace for selling illegal drugs by the drug dealers is much smaller than it was before. And again, that's because this is an inelastic market. So restricting the amount of buyers you have in the first place is a far better way of reducing the total value, revenues, and profits of drug dealers.